This tutorial is all about using Rhino to submit a model to the UTSOA Render Farm. This tutorial also assumes that you've already gone through the basics and know what the rrSubmitter tool and our control tools are. Uh, so I will brush up on those quickly to be sure we're all on the right page. First thing to do is open a VPN connection to the VPN Texas. And that way you'll have access to the Arch Render and Arch data servers. Second thing we want to be sure we've done is made a shortcut on the desktop. So that means type in the 2 arch-data.austin.utexas.edu. That will bring you to your course share on the server. In this case, I'll use RS just for teaching this tutorial. That is my shortcut for the UNC path every time. Next step is to get your Rhino model open. In this case, I will be showing you first the Rhino Render and make that perspective viewport active. My current render tools are here. Rhino Render, current viewport is perspective. I'm going to go for the viewport size to make it small, just to test my workflow and be sure everything's good and happy. DPI will be 200 for this iteration. I'll leave the rest as is. And next step is to execute the Python script, which will reset Rhino's scripting mechanism. I'll just minimize that. And step after that will be rrSubmit Rhino, which will execute the Render plugin. You'll be asked to save your document. All right, once your Rhino file has saved successfully, the rrSubmitter plugin will open. This is where we get to iterate and submit our Rhino file to the farm for rendering. In this case, I'd like to submit the single frame into the production farm. I'll highlight the production filter and say assign only. You have another option here to filter by memory. So for instance, if you went to 64, you'd filter out anything slower than 64 gigs of RAM, which is a good idea if you have a big file or a big model. Small model, it's not going to matter. One thing to know here is the render farm is a level playing field, so no one really gets an advantage if they try to increase the priority, which is always at 50 on the back end. So if you were to adjust this, it wouldn't actually matter. What you're seeing here is a minimum of 1 farmer, a maximum of 15 if we were submitting an animation of sorts. In this case, it's just a single frame, so we're not going to be concerned with that. I'm going to uncheck the render preview first because I'm not going to wait for it to preview my files. One thing I'd like to check up here, or several things in scene settings, is that the file name is what it should be, but what I want to do is provide the database path. Since Rhino doesn't necessarily include that information, it's good to keep that there. All I did was copy paste. Next step we're looking for is a single output file as a TIFF file. If you were to uncheck that, you'd have to provide the extension right here, which in that case is TIFF, but of course you'd have to eliminate it there. The image directory is coming from the scene folder itself, so I could enter a folder name here and it would make it. For now, I'll leave it as the default scene folder, so my rendered file will end up in the same directory as my model. And here's my scene name. That's going to pick up the same scene name as my model, unless I want to change it, which in this case, I think I will. And I'll call it image 01. The reason for that is we'll do several images in all different resolutions. All right, since I'm using Rhino Render, I'll use the default renderer and select Submit. Close the submitter, back into Rhino Render, set up for the next iteration. We're going to increase our resolution. Let's go 1280 by 720. This is where the farm's power really comes into play, and we get to iterate. This is where I would not want to wait for my laptop to render all of my versions. This is where I submit to the farm and go back to working on my model. 1280 by 720 sounds good. back up to my command, just type RR and it'll remember the latest rrSubmit Rhino. Save scene again. Okay, my Rhino file is now saved again with the new scene settings, and rrSubmit is open. Checking my scene settings, I will drop in that database path again. Notice that it's 1280 by 720 here. And I'm going to switch this one over to .tiff and screen name image 02. This will again go into the production filter, assign only, and uncheck render preview first. And I think that's good. Submit. All right, closing in the submitter, back into Rhino for a third iteration. I'm going for 1920 by 1080 this time for higher res, and maybe go higher with DPI. 300 DPI this round. Let's see what we can get. Back up into the rrSubmit Rhino. Save scene. All right, my Rhino file is saved. Our submitter is open, ready to go. This time around, screen name.tiff. I'm going to do this a little bit differently to just show you some options. Make this image 03. But know that I did not uncheck the single file output. It's one and the same, still a single file. Showing you the option to allow you to have a preference. And unchecking my render preview first. Production, assign only. We are at 1920 by 1080. That's it. Submit. Close submitter. Next steps, now that we've submitted 3 iterations of our Rhino Render perspective view, is to open up RR control and have a look at our list of submissions here and see where they are in progress. Looks like all 3 are running. And looking at my file list as to where I'm saving them, all 3 are created. That's good. And that's it. Already done. That is definitely the power of using the farm. I did not have to wait to watch my laptop render any of those. So this was all about iterating with Rhino Render and getting as many versions of your render into the farm as you wish. We could have used, outside of resolution, we could have applied sun systems, different texture combinations, maybe different times of day. It's up to you to be creative with this, but the farm is there for you to use. All right, thanks.